As usual, I have a hard time keeping up with the videos. I've done a lot of stuff lately that I'm not gonna cover, maybe not at all, or at least not in any great detail. So, but the poor excavator that was brought to the garage during the winter and mainly been sitting there, but now that it's warmed up, it was time to start seeing if any of the oil leaks can be found, and this one has kind of been neglected for many years and just been used, and now that I'm own it myself, I want to kind of fix at least easy leaks rather than just fill oil. Started cleaning a little, and the intake for the cooling fan on this Deutsch air-cooled engine was removed for better access to the fan area, and it's hard, and I think a lot of the mess here is from old leaks that it's just never been cleaned. So, and this time around I had decided to change the belts here. I know we looked at it like 10 years ago after we have had the belt skip at least the warning light for the fan belt. If that skips, still functions on it. A lot of other stuff we have killed when it comes to the safety department. I know some pressure sensor was leaking, and that was just removed and plugged. So it's a little bit of a machine that I can't put too much money into it, because if something major breaks, it will be the junkyard and the, what do they call it, the torch axe next. But a couple of new belts is very little money, and they have been plenty oily and looks quite worn. So even if I've seen worse, took a lot of struggling trying to undo all the bolts here on the coupling between the engine and the hydraulic pump. Did hope it would be possible to just move this rubber spacer back, so we loosened all the bolts. In hindsight, that was a mistake, because it turned out there are some pins, I think, sticking out of the coupling side on the pump that holds the rubber in place, and I didn't want to try forcing this rubber all the way out with it being old and brittle and looking bad, and don't want to replace it. So decision was made to loosen the pump and move that back a little bit. Did add a couple of long bolts here to help kind of guide the pump back, or at least so it doesn't drop down, and make it easy to reinstall. Took a little bit of struggling, because it's kind of a press fit, or maybe not press fit, but it's a quite tight hole and some corrosion. So after some wiggling and pulling and pry bar, eventually it kind of came out of that groove and could be moved back far enough that the belts could be taken out. And more cleaning. I've spent many hours trying to clean this up. I wonder if, the intake rubber hose was kind of broken, and we did some kind of ugly repair with a little bit of silicone, and that caused issues later. But I think I missed that when I tried reinstalling it. We had it started with the fan belt removed for a quick little test to see if anything noticeable could be seen, but I wonder if a leak might not show itself until things are warmed up. If it's something to do with this oil cooler that sits here, and it's kind of odd. The first 2-3 cylinders that look kind of oily and greasy, but the last few of them kind of have a little surface rust on them and not at all oily like these. So but it's with the amount of build up that's on the fan, some oil leak it is. But I know many years ago we had an oil pipe have a pinhole leak causing an oil mist all over the machine, so it's probably the fan probably sucked in a lot of oil then. So it's hard to tell where things come from when they weren't clean to start with. So more cleaning, scraping, sure a pressure hot water pressure washer might help, but I'm also a little afraid of those because they tend to push water into bearings and other things. So I would probably have used it had I had one in a good place to clean the machines, but now I resort to scraping compressed air. Took a little break from cleaning and looked at because the diesel heater on it has been acting up, and it has a lot of extra parts, more pumps than needed, because we have changed it that we have a separate fuel tank for it that's above the heater itself, so it has gravity assistance when in the old days it used to suck fuel from the big fuel tank.
Ja, jag skulle ha primat slangen.
Yeah, I should have primed the hose, because now that we have bypassed some of the other pumps that has been on there. We actually had it working in the original setup many years ago, and then it was moved to a separate fuel tank because it started acting up again, and then it's actually been quite
4300.
nice. This one has been running quite well. Yeah, we were screaming a little at each other. My dad is in the cab and we hadn't hooked up the phones to talk to each
Jag har
other.
grejer mot avgasröret, därför det ryker så jävligt.
Yeah, I had some diesel soaked rag on the exhaust pipe that caused a little bit of smoke. It worked fine like that, so for now we're just gonna bypass some stuff. I unhooked that extra pump that's not even connected anymore, and the connectors for it to not have any shorts in here was shrink wrapped, shrink tubed. Had to remove some old filter unit because I wanted to bring the hose in at the same place as the other had come in. Also have an inline filter on that hose, even if it gets quite clean fuel, since we fill that small tank and it's plastic and you can't get any rust stuff from like you could get from the big tank. Generator belt was removed and more cleaning. And from somewhere oil has come onto the belts and sprayed both sides. Here it's the fuel tank, on the other side of this setup it's the hydraulic oil tank, and they have been plenty black. And by now the fan, you could actually spin it by hand. In the beginning it was so much build up that the fan, this is actually the solid part of this setup. I noticed the oil dripping from above, and a lot was collected behind this seal. Might look if I can replace that seal, but now the fan, the spinning part was hard to move because of all the build up, and now it spins nice and freely, so that will probably save the belt some. Time to start reassembling. I added the balls. We had also added some zip ties because it's a metal spacer there also, and when we did the test start earlier to have a quick look, we could see them start wandering out, and maybe they could have started hitting something that was spinning, so just as a precaution. It was killed and put zip ties there to secure the spacers into place. Quite tight, quite fiddly, but not too bad to reassemble. And I missed when I installed the new belts, but there are 2 brand new belts. I need to tighten the generator still, but the fan belt is the tension, it is spring loaded, and as I understand that could be this tensioner unit feels like it has a lot of play in it. I'm not sure if I showed that in an earlier video, but that could be a source of leak, because that is connected inside the engine compartment, inside the engine, and might be subjected to some oil pressure from the back side, and if it's then a little worn and so on, maybe oil can sneak its way out there and then be sucked up through the fan. Kind of suspect something is leaking on this side that is causing it, but it might be around that oil cooler also. We'll look at it better once it's up and running.